Hey, what's going on? Welcome to AngularAir. I'm your host, Justin Schwarzenberger, and on today's episode, we are going to go from 0 to however far we can get with NX. We're going to take a look at the latest version of NX, kind of dive in, sling some code around, see how far we can get, and discuss what NX brings and that sort of thing. So let's meet our panelists today. We've got Alyssa Nigel with us. Alyssa, how's it going?
Hey, glad to be here.
And we've got Bonnie Brennan with us back. Bonnie, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm excited. I missed you guys last week. I didn't want to miss this show. And I'm a big fan of NX, so I think this is going to be pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Mike Brocky's with us. Mike, how's it going?
Sorry, I was a little busy. I have like pages and pages of questions ready to ask to learn a little bit more about NX. So I wanted to get those ready and organized. I'm not prepared.
You're going to love it, Mike.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting because NX is built on the Angular CLI. So you may be asking yourself those questions. We'll find out. I don't know. All right. And as a co list. All right. And so I'm going to be showing a bunch of stuff with NX, but I've got a co-guest with me. Jason Jean is joining us. Jason, how's it going?
Hey, so I work on NX, so I guess I will be fielding the more expert questions per se.
Yeah,
like all day, every day?
All day, every day, yeah.
Wow!
Well, don't worry because NX is built on the CLI, so if there's anything wrong, you can just kick it back and blame it on them.
Yes.
Anything
On Mike
that
specifically.
Mike can't answer.
Yeah. Don't
Which
worry.
is nothing. Mike can answer anything, so.
I can leave early today.
So you leave early. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about demoing this stuff because I feel like I've got some good backup here with people that are going to help me out if I run any snags or anything like that, or just to explain stuff in more detail. Should be pretty cool. And
you guys, Justin said that I could be in charge of the YouTube chat since he's going to be busy showing us awesome stuff. So if you have any questions,
be afraid. Be very afraid.
It's going to be so fun in the chat.
All right. Well, we got an hour, so let's go for it and see how we can do. First thing I want to do is I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to just kind of bring up our documentation on NX and kind of talk about what it is and what problems it's solving and what it provides and that sort of thing. Just a higher level kind of overview of what NX is, right? So let's see. Share. Okay. Present to everyone. All right, is that good, everybody? We're good? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so NX is Narwhal extensions for Angular provided by the Narwhal team. It's an open source project. Really is geared, it's built upon the Angular CLI. It's an enhancement to the Angular CLI, and it's geared towards solving several things, right? And kind of our core values of what it's trying to do is targeting productivity, consistency, and safety. Productivity is really about making it more efficient for doing these things that you normally do in terms of building. And I should step back really quick and talk about the fact that it's really bringing this mono repo approach to an application suite, right? So you can have this idea of a single workspace, a single repository that contains multiple applications, libraries that support that application, other type of things and toolings all around that in one single repository, right? The Angular CLI provides us the ability to do that, but it's geared more towards kind of like a single app or an app and live out the box. And X is really trying to take and apply on top of that and provide all this additional tooling and consistency and things on top of that to make that workflow possible. Because one of the challenges with a mono repo is it requires a lot of tooling and additional work in order to kind of balance all of that code, make all that happen, make all that work within that system. So NX really focuses on these three things: productivity, consistency, and safety. And productivity being the tooling around making these tasks that you do more efficient, creating new applications, creating new libraries, repeat creation of that code, configuration of that stuff, these tasks that we run, helping out in any way that it can to automate those sort of things or take that out of the developer's hands to make that more efficient, right? Consistency is providing this way that having this kind of intelligence, application intelligence, or repository intelligence that you know, like this is built in a certain way, in a certain fashion, you can kind of identify patterns and ideal uses for, this library should be consumed and used in this manner, right? We can identify and say, okay, it's not used in that manner. Let's warn people about it. Let the devs know, that wasn't what it was intended, that sort of thing. So to help kind of that implementing kind of patterns and practices for your team and teams, right? As we get into a monorepo, and one of the things is kind of geared a lot towards enterprise Angular application and large teams, but it kind of works across the board. But the idea being that, hey, you can provide this consistency for your different teams that work on different segments of your code across the entire monorepo, right?
A question from the chat. Since you're talking about the pros side of using monorepos, what would be some of the disadvantages of using a monorepo?
Okay, so let me cover the safety part real quick, and then I'll come back to that. Okay. So then the safety is really around making sure that not only that your code is used in the intended manner, like you mentioned, but other things like, where is there places where we know that people can get into trouble with writing code, like race conditions and things like that, and how can we provide helper libraries or helper chunks of code? Like an example is within ngRx for your state management and loading data. Are you doing like a pessimist, or saving data? Are you doing a pessimistic or optimistic update? We have some helper code that kind of encapsulates that workflow, and then you can just leverage that and use that and know that you kind of have this those conditions, those race conditions kind of covered if you go along these patterns without having to rewrite that code each time, right? So it's bundled with some of that stuff as well. So in terms of benefits and drawbacks to the monorepo, right? The benefits being that you have all of your code, in one spot. You have things like third-party libraries that you depend upon. You have this consistency of they all have a single version of those across all of your applications, across all of your libraries, right? Whatever version of RxJS they're using, all of your code base is using the same version. You bump that up, everybody's in line with that. That's a positive. It also potentially could be a challenge in some cases if you maybe depend upon a third-party library as part of your code that you're using that depends upon another thing. I mean, potentially you could run into things like that. But ideally, it helps to have that single version across that platform. From not only the consistency of your code working together, but also when you talk about deployments and the bundle size and scenarios where you have app A and app B and they're both using the same underlying third-party libs versus different ones, that sort of thing. You don't have collisions and stuff like that. But you also run into some challenges, right, with monorepo in terms of segmenting access to your different code base, right? Now, these are things that can be solved within a monorepo, but they involve more tooling. And that's I think, a common theme. And again, that's why NX, one of the reasons why NX exists is to provide this tooling to help you efficiently, live within this monorepo world, because it kind of needs these pieces, right? But say you had multiple repos for your code base, it's pretty easy out of the box in that scenario to, lock out certain teams to one repo and give them access to another one so that you can, protect that different code base. Whereas in monorepo, you have to go through more steps to kind of pull that off. Does that answer that question? Feel good about that, Mike?
Yeah, I was just the messenger. I was reading the question. So Bonnie was reading the YouTube chat. She posted in the Hangout chat, and I read it. So I'm like second cousin twice removed on that question. But yes,
that was actually Sawat's
like
question.
Explanation.
That was a very good question. And we have another question from Dark Magician. And it would be a great question for Austin McDaniel, who's not here because he's a slacker.
I know. I was like, where is that man? Where is he?
Yeah. They're asking about ngXS, Austin. What are you doing? Do you know off the top of your head, Justin, if you can use ngXS with NX for the chat questions?
Yeah, I mean, you can. You can use really kind of whatever you want. I mean, if it works within an Angular CLI workspace, you're doing the same thing, right? So it's not a problem. NX provides some ngRx code, some code generators and stuff like that to work with NGRX. There's nothing provided out of the box right now for NGXS, but there's nothing that stops you from using it within that system, right? Yep.
All right,
Jason,
show us the code.
Anything else you want to add to that description, Jason, before we move on, or anybody else?
Yeah, I would just like to elaborate that it's mostly about the tools that you get. Having all your code in one place lets you focus on your tooling because you don't have to replicate all that improvements across multiple different repos. So you have one focus point and you can update the tooling as much as you want and it affects everything.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to switch to some code. So I'm going to
Woohoo!
running. I am going to...
You're so impatient, Bonnie.
I'm so excited.
Like, why haven't you showed us the code yet,
I want to see
Justin?
the code.
All right. Present to everyone. Okay. Everybody see my VS code?
You have a typo.
Don't have a typo. All right. This is how this is going to go, huh? Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a new NX workspace. And the current recommended way to do that is to leverage this binary that's provided by the @narwhal/schematics scope package that's called create-nx-workspace. What it's going to do is you can run this command and it'll basically scaffold out using the ng-new command under the hood, passing in the collection of @narwhal/schematics, and then providing you the opportunity to do any other options or anything that the new NX workspace command allows you to do. And it basically will sandbox kind of pulling down the Angular CLI, all the other bits that are needed in order to kind of get up and going. It's kind of the fastest way to do it. You simply need @nrwl/schematics installed globally, which I already have, but I'll show you. It's npm I for install -g @nrwl/schematics.
Okay, hold on. Can you stop on that one for a second before you hit enter? Because most of us, I mean, everyone knows, right? Because Narwhal's been around for a while, but just in case you haven't heard of Narwhal, I don't know where you've been for the last couple of years, it's NRWL, because you said that really fast. And sometimes I still want to like throw in a random H because I just feel like I should. So I just wanted you to stop there for a minute. Okay, so keep going.
Yeah, so as Jeff Cross likes to say, they were all out of vowels when we grabbed the name.
Out
so
of
we just had to go with
vowels.
NRWL, right? So,
and James Cleary has a really good question. I know if we keep asking you questions, you're probably not going to get too far into this, but it's a really good question. But I think you're going to cover this in a minute. Does NX offer any tooling for publishing libs to NPM as part of the build, or is it something devs have to manually configure via package.json? But that's like later on down because you're going to talk about libs, right?
Yeah, why don't we come back to that later on?
Yeah, you got to wait, James Cleary.
Okay, so you need to have this installed globally, right? And then you're probably going to want the Angular CLI installed globally as well. You don't need it with the binary that we're going to run, but you can do this all in one command here. If you don't have the Angular CLI installed, you could do that and run them and install them both globally. Like I mentioned, I have those both installed globally already, so I don't need to run that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run create NX workspace.
And you said this is a binary that we're using?
Correct. The @nrwl/schematics comes with this binary script that provides the command create-nx-workspace that we could run from the terminal or the command line at any point, and it'll do this creation for us, right?
So for scrubbly nublets like myself, binaries are just scripts that are ran in the terminal?
So I would say, or I'm not positive, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Justin and Jason, but as you're installing it globally, it adds it to your path so that you can execute it globally, execute it anywhere, just like the CLI adds the ng binary. So it's not technically a binary like it's compiled code. It's just giving you access as it's basically making it executable.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we're
creating
creating
an executable node script that gets added as a global command.
Oh, look how concise, Jason. You're amazing.
It just for the record, Lisa, I did not know that either. So that was a really good question. I know the word binary, but I didn't know it in that context. So Good on you, Alyssa.
Isn't it great when you have a support group? I love it. I love it. You can't do this stuff alone, man.
This isn't a podcast, it's a support group.
Support group.
Okay, so we're creating a workspace. Are we giving it a name or are you just pressing enter?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to do one more than that. Okay. So I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to give it AngularAir platform.
And I assume if we did underscores, it would be like Girk.
You'd have to ask Mike that, because what this is doing under the hood is going to call ngNew, handing it AngularAir platform is the name of the thing we want to use.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think it does have to be a dash though, but don't quote me on it. Try whatever you want. Get yelled at once in a while.
Oh yeah, he will get yelled at. So let's not.
So this is going to run. It's going to create that. It's going to create a directory called AngularAir platform, and it's going to set up the NX workspace. Basically, it's going to use ngNew from the Angular CLI. Yet it's going to configure the folder structure and some things a little bit different based on the style for NX. It's also not going to create an initial app. The Angular CLI, when you do ngNew, will create an initial application for you. This is not. You'll have to add those in addition. But the other thing that it'll do is it's going to use this name right here as an NPM scope within that workspace to allow you to do these shorthand imports for libs that you create throughout your NX workspace. So if we had a lib called common UI, in this scenario, we would be able to do @AngularAir-platform /common UI as our import path, rather than like a full, relative path import. And that makes it really nice. But it also allows us to do type of make kind of like public APIs. You can utilize this barrel file. We'll get into that. We'll show that. That allows you to, have stuff in your libraries that you say that this lib, these things are exported, so they're public. They could be used by other libs and apps. These things are private. They're not flowing through that gateway type of that barrel, access point. So just this command right here will create that folder as well as the npm scope with that same name. Now, if I don't like that as my npm scope, I can give it a --npm scope option and set that equal to whatever I want, right? So in this case, I want to do ngAir, and I want to use that as my scope. So I can do @ngAir/lib or whatever, right? So this is saying I'm going to create a directory called AngularAir-platform, put all the code in it, configure it with this npm scope of ngAir. Okay. And we'll cross our fingers.
So while this runs, just to kind of explain in other words, if anyone didn't get it the first time, this is an npm scope as if you were to publish things to npm. The libraries that NX generates are meant to be almost node module-esque, but their source code is inside your repository. So the npm scope is what you would usually see if you publish under a scope in npm.
And Alyssa and Mike and I were just having a chat over off on the side because Alyssa and I did not know what a barrel file was, and Mike told us it's the index file, which seems so silly, but I didn't know that word.
Stop telling people how dumb I am, Bonnie.
No, I didn't know either.
It's
but
all
it's
right.
simple.
We're going to show that. We'll cover that. We'll show that.
Okay, good.
Okay, almost done here. Okay, so, by the way, I'm using VS Code here, right? I decided to use VS Code for my terminal to go install this, to set this, install this package or create NX workspace, right? And I'm presenting just this code window. So as a presenter, here's a little presenter tip, right? I'm sharing just this application, VS Code. I'm utilizing its terminal, and now I'm ready to open up this project in here. So I'm going to just do a real quick Command K to clear my terminal here. And I'm like, okay, I've got VS Code open, but I don't have this workspace open. Let's open this thing up. So I'm going to do code space, and I can run code at the terminal. Maybe you're familiar with that. To open up, I could do like code period, space period, and that would open up the current working directory in VS Code. I'm going to do, I have this new directory called AngularAir platform, right? Now, I believe this, when I run this from the terminal, it's going to open up a brand new window of VS Code, which is not going to be great for my presentation because then I'd have to stop sharing this one and do the other one. I can do -R for reuse. And I believe it should open that up in this window. Boom.
That was very slick.
So, you could kind of like live in VS Code from your start with the terminal, create new projects, and then stay in there to open it up. So I don't know.
But the explanation took just as long.
No, but that was a good explanation.
It absolutely is. It really is.
I hate to keep asking questions because I want you to get as far as you can, but there are so many questions because Purawit on the YouTube chat wants to know where you got that font. And I was actually wondering that too. So I like that question. Because look at the F. That's different.
I don't hear him talking.
I know what happened. We broke Justin.
No, I'm looking it up.
I was like, forever alone.
Is dank mono. So there you go. I was on the fence of getting it and using it because of that F, because the F's like, wow, it hangs low, but I like it. It's pretty cool. So I'm rolling.
It's unique. I like it too.
Yeah,
dank.
Now I want it. And now I have to have it because I want to be just like Justin.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. And so, by the way, I'll keep going. If anybody else can answer any of these questions, feel free to jump in and answer them while I'm doing this. So, I'm good.
That sounds good. You can keep going, but in all fairness, we've been the ones asking the questions.
It's true. All right. So I've got my NX workspace set up, right? I've got these apps and libs directories that it created. That's going to be the home for applications, the home for libs libraries that we create. Notice that there's none in there right now. This is a little bit different than a default Angular CLI project, right? Or workspace. Are we calling them workspaces now, Mike? Or
that's workspace.
Okay. So it's a little bit different. Go ahead.
The documentation for the CLI is also being updated. And a workspace is basically a collection or a grouping of projects, where a project is by definition either an application or a library.
Cool. And so we'll get into that as well as we start adding these things here, right? Essentially, these apps and libs, kind of just what Mike was saying, they're projects within the Angular CLI, and we'll see how that unfolds in this angular.json file as we add these things in here. But NX basically groups these things in these two directories, apps and libs, right? Okay. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to add 2 new applications. So we're talking the AngularAir platform. We need a new website desperately. And we're going to create a new admin app that we can allow us to kind of manage the data on the back end, right? So I'm going to use the ng generate command. We're going to do G for generate, short for generate. And we're going to use the app schematic. Now, I believe the Angular CLI now has an app schematic. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, I know it's application. I'm not sure if it's aliased out to app or not, but yes, you can generate applications with the CLI out of the box, not excluding NX.
Right. Okay. So it may be that with NX, we're providing the shorthand of app as well, but it's basically kind of could do the same thing. It's going to create a new application. It's going to put that in the apps directory. It's also going to do some additional wiring up that adds some additional functionality that NX will know about in order to help that out as well. So we're going to run this. We're going to do ng generate app. We're going to give it the name of the app. We're going to do website. And we're going to provide an option flag called routing, -- routing, because this application, we want to have routing right out of the box, have a router outlet, that sort of thing. The Angular CLI provides this option, I believe. And so we're able to kind of leverage that and get that. So
it does.
Website app with routing. So let's do a -D real quick, short for dry run. So we can just confirm really quick that everything's, all of our ducks are in order. D for ducks or D for dry run, however you want to remember it. So we can kind of
definitely
see
ducks.
So we can see that our ducks are in order, right? It's going to create this directory inside of the app. It's going to actually create 2 directories inside of the apps directory. One called website, the name we gave it. One called website -E2E. That's going to be our end-to-end test. So it's actually a little bit different. It's creating 2 folders in that application and 2 essentially projects, an end-to-end project as well as the actual app that we're creating. And then it's going to create a lot of the same sort of stuff that an Angular CLI application or project would have inside of it, the same kind of files with a few differences, few additions. So that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and run that again without the -b. And the other thing that NX is going to do each time that we run these schematics is it runs the format command that NX provides. NX provides this format command that we can run that will use Prettier under the hood to auto format our code within our workspace. And so each time we run a schematic, we'll see that the format command was run. And we usually end up seeing some stuff that gets changed a little bit around from the default schematic that the Angular CL, some of the stuff that provides will get tweaked just a little bit with the formatting. But that's that output here. Okay, so I'm going to clear and Command K just to kind of give us some clean room here. I'm going to run the same thing again, and I'm going to create admin.
So to give a little bit of background, each app is like a deployable thing. So the reason why we want a separate app for admin is that this is going to be a separate kind of part of the site that's not going to be a part of the main website. But the code is all in this one monorepo.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the idea here is that, like, let's say in this case, we're going to have actual, like maybe 2 different destination URLs, one for the website, angularair.com, one for the admin, which I'll share with you if you're an admin. But yeah, 2 running, but we want to share, code across those 2 applications during our development process. We're going to have common UI that's shared between the 2. How do we get those into those 2 different applications? And within this mono repo, it becomes really, straightforward and a little bit more efficient to be able to just do these import statements and bring them in rather than like rebuild or redistribute a library, npm install it, that whole thing. So some of those benefits there, right? Okay, so we've got our 2 apps created. Each of those come with an E2E as well, right? The structure of these files are real similar to what you'd see with an Angular CLI application in terms of the patterns and practices of how it names things and structures things, that sort of thing. We can see if we go into our app module, it's set up with the router module. We can go into our app component. We've got this router outlet. We kind of got everything kind of ready to go for these applications. I'm going to do a quick commit. I'm going to say add apps. And that in there, and then we'll go back to the code so I can kind of have a marker there in case anything goes bad with any of these steps. I can kind of stop and roll back. Okay, so now let's add some libs.
Woohoo!
Has any questions or anything going on right now?
We're pretty excited about those libs.
Okay. All right. So let's make this a little bigger here. Clear this out. Okay. So we've got our 2 apps. Now, the apps, they're really designed to be this build point, this entry point, and the configuration, right? And then everything else, recommended way in NX, everything else should be built inside of libs, right? So all the stuff that powers these apps, all the UI, all that stuff, you build these out in libs, and the stuff that sits within these apps is really just for this initial configuration and build definition for the core startup of the app, right? And this is kind of similar to if you think about, like, if you're building a single Angular application and you make feature folders within it, you go through the Angular style guide and you follow that same process and you make feature folders for, routed modules or whatnot. You kind of start building out this tree underneath your app directory for all of your components and all that stuff that powers your app, right? Well, you kind of can think of this as just taking all that folder structure and just organizing that in the libs folder now instead of directly in your app folder. And that's kind of where we're going here, right? And then it opens the door for all this additional stuff that you can do, this knowledge about how you try to intend to use these libs, how you bring them in, how you share them across other apps, that sort of thing. So not too much different from what you're already used to, just in a different location that enables the ability to do a lot of other stuff, right? And again, at the heart of it, this is simply an enhanced, version of an Angular CLI workspace, right? At the end of the day, you're still dealing with an Angular CLI workspace, configuration set up to point to different ways, tooling set up to enhance that experience, right? But the buy-in is not something that, you know, is too heavy in terms of, oh, well, now am I locked into something NXE or, you know, something, that sort of thing. No, you're still an Angular CLI project. You still have ways to kind of control all of that sort of thing. That makes sense. Okay, so our website app, we're going to have a home route. That's basically the main screen of the application. And then we're going to have an episode route that we want to do lazy loaded. That's going to be the details for a single episode, right? That we could drill into. And then our admin app, we're going to have a dashboard route. That's going to be the home route, the main route, right? And then we're going to have a episodes route destination and a people route destination that will both be lazy loaded. So let's set up some libs that represent those different routed views, right? So first thing I'm gonna do is ng generate a lib using the lib schematic, and I do name this home. And I am going to set up a few different options here, okay? I'm going to say that it's going to have routing, -- routing. I'm going to say that the -- parent module is going to be, and I'm going to give it a path to where this parent module is. So basically what I'm telling it is I'm going to say this lib is going to be a routed lib. I want you to set up routing in it. I want you to add it as a route to this parent module, right? So we've got this apps/website/source/app.module.ts. Okay. Second, bring this over here a little bit. So we're saying set up routing and target this parent module, add this thing to the parent module at apps website source app module. Do a -d for dry run, see what it's going to do. Now, right now, I think that the output here from the dry run is going to show a little bit extra things that is not actually going to get created. It's not going to, I think, Jason, you remind me, there's a scenario where some of the stuff is extra. This case, it might be right.
This is a little bit extra. You're not actually going to get a component nor a service, but most of the other things will be created. This is kind of just a fluke in how we're doing our schematics, but your actual files won't be created. That's because schematics is all deterministic.
Okay, so we're going to run this one and create a new lib called home. Actually, I'm going to do one other thing here. I want to organize this within a subdirectory within libs, because this home module, this router module essentially is going to be for our website application. So I'm going to do -- directory equals website, so that I can say, okay, in the libs directory, create a nested directory called website, put this new lib inside of that. So I can kind of have some mental model of where these things live, right? Okay. And let's do -g real quick to see that it creates our directory nested here compared to this other one. So see, now we can see libs/website/home, right? So I'll go ahead and run that.
Justin, while that's running, there was a question in the chat, and I'm stealing Bonnie's job here real quick. When you create a new NX workspace, do you get any default projects out of the box, or or is that on you after you've created that?
It's on you. You don't get anything. The apps and the libs are empty when you create a new NX workspace.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
You'll get what you get and you'll like it.
Which is an empty file.
You get what you get, but then you can add whatever you want on top of that.
Such a positive, Jason.
Like you get plain ice cream, and then they'll give you all the sprinkles you ever wanted.
Okay, that's a good point. Vanilla ice cream with sprinkles is hard to beat.
Now I'm gonna ice cream.
Okay, so now I'm going to add the dashboard module for the admin app. Same sort of deal, right? It's going to be this initial route that we want to go to. We're not going to lazy load it. It's going to be like the first route that the thing hits. But we want to create all the UI and everything for that within this library or this lib. So we can do app module ts. We're going to do dash dash directory. And this one is going to be admin for our admin application dash D, just to check real quick. Okay, we'll run that. And then we'll take a look here at what it created with the file structure. We'll see what it did for the routing. We'll make a quick couple tweaks to it. So we'll jump in here. We can see in our libs directory over here on the left that we've got an admin directory now nested, right? And we got this dashboard lib that it created. It created a source folder for that. Created this index.ts file in here. Hopefully we'll touch on that here a little bit later as we talk about the barrel stuff and public access. It creates a lib directory with the code for that. Created our module, like Jason had mentioned, the output that it was going to create a component and a service, but it doesn't actually, just creates the module for you, the starting point for you, right? We got the same thing for website. We created this home lib, so it's got the same sort of structure, that sort of thing. And then if we go into our website up here, go to our source app module TS, we can see that we've got this added this path for website dash home for the website home routes, bringing in that routing from our website home lib that we created, right? So this is going to auto wire up that application for us that we targeted with that parent module to get the routing all set up, right? Now we can come into our website home routes and we could configure the routing from there as need be, right? It's kind of,
you know what I love about this, which is kind of what I love about NX just overall, that it sets up the structure for you. Because if you go back to that last file you were in, the first time I ever did that, like I you know, when I was first learning the routes and stuff, I kind of had struggled with that syntax, right? And it's not terribly complicated unless you don't know exactly, like if you miss one thing, or if you put the children in quotes, it's not going to work, right? So once you have that, it's just so much easier. That's what I love. It's one of the things I love about it, but it's just really nice.
Well, if you love that, wait till we get to the lazy part, right? Because then it gets even better, right? Less stuff that you have to do. Again, this is this, you know, productivity and consistency thing, right? I can take that out of these things that the software can know about, the tooling can know about, take that out of our hands, allow it to do it for us, allow us to rapidly build, iterate, implement, as well as do it in a consistent manner, right? That we don't have to act, especially when it comes to the lazy routes and we're dealing with the string notation, right? For where that route is, it's really easy to forget that pattern. This will kind of take that out of our hands, right? And
it's nice because it's very opinionated. So it's like it's gonna be very specific about the way it wants the way it wants this done. But it's Victor Savkin's way. So, and he's really good at this. So it's okay, just do it.
And I would say it's opinionated based on, you know, it following kind of the Angular style guide, following the patterns that are already there, a lot of the stuff that you're already used to, with the addition of stuff that Narwhal has learned that is needed for, you know, teams to build Angular at scale and be efficient at this stuff. So it's a mix of those two, right?
Because it's not like it's just Victor and Jeff in the back room, like figuring out how to do this, because they do all this consulting in enterprise. So they go into all these teams and find things that are happening a lot, things that different people are trying to implement, and sometimes the same mistakes that you see over and over again in different companies. And then this just kind of solves all that and takes all those different experiences that they've seen all over the enterprise companies and then put it all into the solution. That's genius. Sorry, Justin, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Okay, so we've got our kind of regular loaded routes that we're going to have for those components, right? Let's add some libs that are going to be lazy loaded. So we're going to ng generate lib. Let's call this one episode. And this is going
This is my favorite part.
This is going to be for for an episode details for the website. So imagine the website. We've got our home screen that's going to list out all of the episodes upcoming and existing. And if you click on one, it's going to navigate to the details for that specific episode, right? Give you all the bits about that. maybe even embedded player and all that stuff. And so this is going to be that episode route, right? And we want to do that lazy loaded because people may come to our homepage. They may never click on an episode. Tears, that would be sad, but hopefully they will. But if they didn't, then they don't get this code until, they demand it, right? They request it. So now we want to lazy load it. So we are going to do -- routing. We're going to do -- parent - module equals apps / website, right? Source / app / one of the things I'd hope for, maybe we'll be able to do this, is ability to like tell it the project name, like project name website, and have it resolve this parent module for us. We don't have to type this out each time. Again, though, it's open source, right? NX is open source, so maybe somebody wants to get adventurous and make a PR that helps us out or whatnot for that. That would be cool. But it is a little bit, a lot of verbose for typing this parent module path out there, right? But got that. Now, the other thing we're going to do is going to do -- lazy. And that's going to tell this module, this routing module is actually a lazy loaded route that we intend it to do. So it's going to know how to create that setup under the hood. Again, this is for our website application. So let's stuff that in the directory website under libs. And we'll do -d just to make sure we got everything. Okay. And let's roll the dice.
So you've been using -d a bunch, and I want to run an idea about a potential feature with -d. Do you think it would be helpful if you could specify -d in some sort of verbose way, where not only would you see just a list of files, but potentially the different changes to those files?
I would not complain about that. That would be, especially when you talk about like, okay, what did it do to my app.module file, right? That'd be pretty cool, but that'd be pretty verbose, right?
Potentially, but maybe because I've given this some decent thought, but maybe also have some sort of glob or regex at the end as an option to be able to specify, hey, only show me the verboseness of this particular subset.
I think it's a great idea.
I agree. I think any additional options are always great. I'm more than happy to have more information. That'd be awesome. Okay, what's the shortcut for formatting code in VS Code?
Command-Shift-P, format document.
Or you actually just like type
no,
format,
it's not
right?
the shortcut to find the shortcut.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, so it's
Alt-Shift-F?
Is that Alt?
I always forget what that is, that middle one.
Oh, no, that's Option.
Shift Option.
It's rubbed off now, but I actually drew with Sharpie those symbols on my keyboard, like the external keyboard, because I could not for the life. I'm like, I don't know what that foreign symbol is.
That is a great idea. I need to do that. I got a Windows keyboard that I use because I switched.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Justin, why don't we show them the command line version of it?
Wait, the command line version of what?
Yeah, great call. Okay, let me just go back here and just plop this back. Okay, so I'm going to, what Jason's referring to is we have this format command, NX provides this format command. So I can run npm run format, and it will look through all the files. It will apply this prettier formatting. And let's see. Cool. Now it's a little bit easier to read, right?
I'm confused on why we don't have to like prefix the commands with anything in XC. Like it's not like with like ng, right? Like I'm like ng new or like ng update, but like with the
Great.
So it is doing that under the hood. Justin, if you would pop into the package.json, we have written all of these scripts for you. So if you go down to format, you'll see that it goes into node modules and gets NX, and then it runs the NX format write command. So you could do that as well.
Oh, you could do that too? You could be like NX format, right? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Everything makes sense now. I love it.
So this part down here, npm space run space, is going to allow you to run any of these scripts in the package JSON file by their name, right?
And those scripts are not binaries, right? Like we're not getting that.
Well, so like this format one is saying run this NX node script that Jason mentioned earlier at the very beginning that's located in node modules.bin /NX, run that, and then pass it the command format : write, right? So that's essentially what it's doing. So it's taking this whole command, which you could run by typing that out at the terminal and just shorthanding that into this, when you call npm run and then this name format, it'll run that command.
Okay, cool.
And this is a sneak peek of all the tooling that NX provides you on top of your code to make sure that you're safe and you're productive and all those things that are core values of NX.
Yep, absolutely. So that's like you mentioned, that tooling that NX provides you. These are all these helper scripts set up to help make it easier to run those commands. Okay, so now if we go back to our app module, we can take a look at this thing. We can see that it has the route that we added before, right, from the regular route, and then it has our lazy loaded route. And we can see that by the load children property, right? And then we've got this magnificent string that we didn't have to type out or remember the pattern. And we've got some other magic that's going on here as well. You notice that we've got this scope, right? This at ngAir /website/episode, and then the name of the module there. And you might be thinking, well, this is kind of different from, isn't this supposed to be like a path, a relative path, or how does that work? Let's dive in real quick and explain that. So each time we create a lib, the tsconfig.json file gets updated its compiler options property, compiler options paths property, to add these additional paths that it can help resolve for these imports and that sort of thing, right? So we added our home lib, we added a dashboard lib, and we just added the episode lib. So each time we added those, this new entry gets created from that schematic inside of here that says, hey, if anybody's requesting the path at ngAir /website/episode, resolve it to this path, which is that index.ts file that lives within that libs directory, libs website episode, which is the barrel file that provides us the public access to the code that we want to expose outside of that lib to allow other libs to be able to use it. Okay. So if we go to this file, let's go there. Website, episode, source, index. I'll leave this open over here. We can see that by default, it is exporting everything from the lib website episode module file, which is inside of this lib directory, website episode module. And so the idea being that we created an ng module for that lib, we auto export it out, flow it out through this index.ts file. Then other libs, apps that want to consume it can import from at ngAir /website/episode. It'll resolve to there. It'll allow you to bring that in, right? And we can see that, I believe, in action here with our website home routes. That is exported as well. We can actually take a look real quick at that. We go to website home source index. We can see it exports from the home module. We can see the home module exports the website home routes, right? So that's how it flows out through that index.ts, through that public API. And then when we see here in this app module, when we import it in, we're requesting this path, right? This shorthand path, which if we go back to the tsconfig.json file, we see the entry for that short path resolves to that index.ts file. So that's how everything kind of gets glued together, makes that short pathing available to us throughout, as well as allows it to say, like, this is the path in to export, to get things out of those libs. If you try and deep link into any of those, anything else beyond that, we can have the linting rules expose an error so that you can be safe, that you're not, people are not using your code as not in intended. That's kind of a double negative, but maybe you get what I mean. So if I look in the TS-lint config, I can go down here. We've got this new entry NX enforce module boundaries that NX adds. It's the rule that is going to say, look, if you try to import stuff beyond what that barrel file provides, we're going to lint error. I believe it'll transpile error as well, and it'll keep us from, doing that sort of thing. Does that make sense? Anything anybody wants to add on that or questions on that?
So this allows you to be safe with how you develop. Like having a public API for your lib allows you to share your code without sharing all of your code. So you don't have to share the nitty gritty. You just have to share the nice, shiny interface for other people to use and keep it simple for other people. So you don't want people to reach inside any deeper, and that's what our lint rules help you do. And that's the general gist of what the lint rules help with.
And one of the ways I like to think about this and explain this too is the fact that you're in a mono repo, right? So you've got all of your code base in there. So let's say I'm tasked with building a service to power this component. And the component is something that's used by other apps within the system, right? But the service I'm writing is designed just to be for that component. It's not, I don't want that service to be imported elsewhere. I don't want people to call methods off of that service. I want this component to call it. It's really just for that component, right? With these boundaries, I can make sure that that's not exported. So if anybody on other teams tries to import and use that service, they'll get this error warning, right? It'll stop them from saying, "Hey, that service is not exposed, so you're trying to use it in a wrong manner." Without that check, it becomes very easy for somebody to potentially bring in that service, find that that's available, start using it, and that wasn't intended, right? You could get multiple instances of the service, state issues and all that stuff. And so it provides this way for you as a developer. It's kind of like saying like public and private on your methods or property fields, that sort of thing. It provides that opportunity to do that across code files, which is really cool, I think.
I think so too. I've used a similar example. It's basically enforceable boundaries. Like people have asked me, well, should I start up with this big monolith application or should I create microservices? And this is even in server-based code. The idea of you can still write this monolith type application or like server side, but you can still have those logical boundaries of a microsite architecture, but have those boundaries built in via code versus structural. It's good practice to enforce boundaries and structure within your applications and libraries.
Cool. Okay, so let me add these other ones real quick here. We're going to do episodes and people for our admin app. They're going to be lazy routes as well, right? I think I've got this all correct. Routing.
One is directory.
What am I missing?
Directory.
Thank you. I almost ran it without our ducks in order check. That would not have been good. All right, like that. And then we'll just do the admin episodes. Yeah. Okay. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Good. Gonna run it. And then we're going to do the same thing for people real quick here. People. Okay, let's do our npm run format real quick. Now it runs that, I don't know, it runs it after the schematic runs. So all the files that have already been added, it's been covered. Is that correct, Jason? Like this, I just ran format again, but I kind of didn't have to because the schematic had it already run. Is that correct?
Yep, that should be mostly correct. I don't know why the other file wasn't changed, but you can pretty much run it as many times as you want. It just won't change anything that's not formatted.
Okay, cool. So now we see that, we've created this episodes and people inside of our admin app. So we got those routes, the loaded children. Of course, we could come in here and change whatever we want our path to be to handle those different scenarios for whatever we want our, our URL structure to be like. Maybe we want this to be episodes and this to be people. It's basically going to use whatever the name of the project that it created, the lib project that it created, as that value right there. So it made it have to do a little tweaking. I'm also going to tweak this to be this empty path so that we basically say, look, the home route for this application is going to go to these admin dashboard route, right? Sort of thing. Of course, we need to go in there and add a route in there for that component, for a dashboard component, scaffolding, that sort of thing. But you can kind of see how you can get going with this sort of stuff. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's add, kind of getting close on time here. Let's add a couple more things here. Let's see. We've got our targeted libs that are specific for these different apps, right? We've nested those in these directories. Our admin app has a couple dashboard episodes, people. Our website one has episode at home. Let's see how we can create if we want to have this idea of a common core module that we want to share across the apps. Well, we can simply do, and not simply, we can do ng generate lib, call this common core, and I think that's all we're going to do. We're not going to use the directory because we're going to have this at the top level libs directory, because our idea is that we're going to use it across apps, right? In this scenario, we're going to use it for admin and website. We may use it if another one comes up or that sort of thing. But let's just call it common core, and it'll give us a place that we could put maybe some common UI components, common services that power those or power the application. We can kind of stuff all those in there and then consume them from the different applications. So we're just going to do -d real quick, confirm. Okay. Let's just run that.
I just want to circle back to a previous question. Someone asked if you could do publishable libs. Since this command is really short, Justin, if you could just add on -- publishable after that to show, and that would generate what the Angular CLI would generate, and it'll come with an ng packager build and all that stuff to help you distribute your package onto npm easily, but you'll have to run the npm publish. So it would be what you ran before with -- publishable.
Yeah, for sure. Check this out. Let's say that we wanted to build like a YouTube embedded component and maybe a podcast audio embedded component that we're going to use in these two apps. And we say, wow, the community could really leverage that as well, right? So instead of stuffing that in our common core, let's just build a new lib, ngg lib, name it ngx, because that's kind of the thing to do, right? Embedded media. And what's the flag? -- publishable? Correct?
Yep.
Publishable. Like that.
Just
Okay.
like that.
-d. Okay, so now we're going to do exactly what Jason was saying, right? We're creating a new lib. We're going to name it this ngx embedded media. It's going to be the home for these, shared components that we want the world to be able to use as well as us. And we're using the flag publishable to do the ability to publish it. And once this is done, we'll take a look at, we'll dive into this Angular JSON file. We'll take a look at the NX JSON file, some additional things, and we'll see this ng packager file and kind of everything that it created, right?
This is so exciting.
Okay, so we're going to collapse these apps up. We're going to go to our lib. Now we have this, right? We have admin, we have website that we had before. Now we've got this common core lib that we created that we're going to share stuff across these two apps. We also have this ngx embedded media folder that we created that lib, right? as Jason mentioned, we've got this ng package file, right, which is for ng packager. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe so. That'll allow us to be able to do this publishing of it, right? This build of it that we can then publish to npm to redistribute.
Precisely.
Cool. So with that flag, we've identified that we want this particular library or this lib to have the bits needed inside of it to allow us to build and deploy that out to the world, right?
And generally, if you're just working on stuff that only your company needs, your team needs, you don't need to make your lib publishable. As you've seen, we are able to import from libs from our apps, right? And that's all we really need. Everything will get compiled at build time just fine. This is for if you're creating something that you'd want to share with people outside your team, outside your company, with the whole community, which you should definitely do, but you don't need to do it for everything.
That's a really good point. I actually had someone, I was doing like Angular office hours at IO this year, and somebody, this woman came up and was actually asking about that, like to have like these shared services among their company's apps. And so for something like that, they'd want it to be a private library. But yeah, this has been great. Thank you both for showing us all this awesomeness.
I want to clarify one thing. So about publishable. Publishable does not necessarily mean that it gets published to NPM. It could be published to some other internal repository, some sort of local organization-wide instance of like some NPM repository.
Great point, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, it's creating the scaffolding needed for ng packager, right, to do its build stuff. But from where you take it from there is up to you, right? Exactly like you said, right? But he scaffolds the stuff that you would need to do that build process to prep that lib to get it ready to deliver it. Build it, bundle it up, and get it ready to go wherever you want to send it. Cool. Okay, so we've got all these things kind of scaffolded out in here, right? Let's take a look real quick at this Angular JSON file and see what it's done and how that's worked, right? So we've got this Angular CLI file. The CLI produces this file, right? It's the structure, the schema based on the Angular CLI setup with Angular CLI 6 and above. We've got this new projects property that allows us to have these different projects. Like Mike had mentioned, it's these applications as well as libraries. They're all different projects. The NX schematics, when we do ng generate app, ng generate lib, it's going to handle creating these entries inside of this file for us. We can see we've got the website and the website-edu, admin edu, and then we also see all of our libs that it created. In this case, we created these in nested directories, so it appended that with a dash to the name of that. So we said our lib was called home, but it was in the website directory, so it created one called website-home for us. Just a naming convention that the NX schematic uses to do that, because each of these keys had to be unique, right? So we've got admin dashboard, website episode, all that good stuff right here. I'm just going to collapse these here real quick. Then I'll expand.
And as you can see here, this is the Angular.json. This is the same thing you would have for an Angular CLI project. And that is an extension of using the NX versus using the CLI. You're making a choice to use NX on top of the CLI.
Yep. And with that, like, this is simply, NX is simply configuring the Angular CLI with these pathing, that sort of thing. So really, you have an Angular CLI workspace under the hood. That's what you're using. And NX just knows, okay, we're going to configure some of these pathings and things to point to these other places. It kind of goes back to that buy-in of like, well, if I decide to use NX, like, am I all NX all the time? I mean, it'd be great. You'll get the benefits of that stuff, right? But under the hood, it's like TypeScript. You buy into TypeScript. TypeScript transpiles to JavaScript. So if you really just wanted to roll JavaScript, you could always roll JavaScript at any time. If you bought into TypeScript, so kind of concept. I guess that's maybe a stretch, but I don't know. But yeah, so it's configured these things for you, right? So it's just put this pathing, right? The index, the main. It just said, look, this is in the apps/directory location, right? Whereas the Angular CLI out of the box will have it in a different path, and that's kind of the difference there, right? But one of the things we've got within here now, and this is a, we're going to set this up in here. It's not really necessarily an NX thing, but it's a fact that we've got a workspace with multiple applications, Angular applications that we want to serve, right? And how do you do that if you want to serve both applications or multiple applications at once? Well, you can do that because you can specify through the ngServe command the port that you want to use. By default, that's 4200. But if we want to run multiple apps, we need to start changing ports for the different ones locally, right? Awesome thing with Angular CLI and this architect property, we've got these different architect commands we can run, build, serve, that sort of thing. We can come into the serve one, and under the options, add port. And yell at me, Mike, if anything's wrong, but I think we're okay here. In the website one, let's just be specific here. We're saying that we want to use 4200 for that one. And then let's go to our admin one. And under serve options, let's make this 4201, right? Now we can use the ngServe command, which takes in a project name, which is the name of these keys, right? To serve these different ones at the same time. So we can go in here, ngServe website, right? Let's add another terminal, ngServe admin. Did I add a terminal?
That was so simple. That's what I love about you, Justin. You make these things look so easy.
Now, I'm just the messenger, right? Like, I didn't make the code that made it easy. I'm just showing it, right? Now, before
Don't be modest.
we can run the command ngServe -- port equals and scaffold that. And then we used to go into our package.json file in the scripts, maybe make a shorthand that's like serve : website and do that whole long command. Now we don't need that package.json script anymore. We can simply come into the architect options in there inside of the AngularJSON file and configure that port there, and we're kind of all good to go. Pretty cool. So we can see this one's running on 4201. This one's running on 4200. And it provides us an easy way to kind of now start working productively in this environment, right?
And to be clear, it doesn't just work for ports. Any of the command line arguments that you pass regularly to serve, build, or what have you, you can place as options within each individual section.
That's beautiful.
Hey,
there's another question in the chat if you have time.
Yeah, we can see here all these options, right, that come up from the schema that it knows about that we can pass in there, right? Okay, go ahead.
Porowit wants to know if there's any difference between using library from node modules and library from NX in terms of build speed.
The library that you're using for node modules is probably already packaged, and it'll already be JavaScript, so it'll get imported a little bit differently. It'll probably be faster to build, but that's not really the point of using the NX library. We're really going to benefit from having the code and building from source here. And you don't want to do this all the time, but like NX has tooling so that you only build what you need. So you don't need to build, say, the website episode library if you're going to deploy the admin episodes. Maybe a bad example, but like it'll detect that you don't need to build a section of it.
Right. And the other thing you have is as you update that library code, right? It's all within that same workspace. You don't need to rebuild and redistribute out to npm and then reinstall the latest version, that you bumped in order to capture that code change, right? It's that's one of the challenges if you sit there and decide, okay, I'm going to make all of my, small chunks of libs into their own packages, and then I'm just going to consume them from whatever apps I want to use them in. Well, you have this workflow of, well, how do you update that package and publish it and consume it when you have something like simple, like a string change or something in one of them? Like what's your speed to develop? And it takes a long time to deploy that out and work that pipeline. Plus you have to bump the version, right? Whereas in here, internally in this workspace, in this monorepo, you're just consuming the latest version of that build. You don't have to go through that pipeline as well. Cool. Okay. So I want to show some of the tooling, some additional tooling here. Let's check about the dependency graph stuff that NX can surface, as well as like this affected. I would love to also kind of mention and show some stuff with using the existing schematics for Angular CLI schematics for generating like components and things like that. We are over time. Does anybody? I don't have a problem staying on and keep going a little bit. If anybody needs to drop off or a panelist or whatnot, let me know. We can do that. Or if you want to hang out for a little bit longer, I'll try maybe like 15 minutes more or something. Sound good?
We're not going anywhere.
Okay.
We don't want to miss any of this.
All right, cool. All right.
I was going to leave, but Bonnie just made it impossible.
No, I just spoke for all of us and all of our YouTube people too. Nobody's dropping off. We're all, hanging on your every word. Go, Justin.
All right. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the dependency graph that we can utilize within NX to get a visualization of our structure of our code. Oh, let me actually, before I do that, let's check a couple other things that we've got in here. And actually, specifically, let's talk about the nx.json file and what this is. So this is, I guess I'll leave this open here. This is NX configuration, right? Prior to NX6, oh, I didn't mention the latest version of NX right now is NX 6.1.1 that's out there. So with NX6, we versioned everything to match with the Angular CLI 6. So all these changes to like the project structure and all those things, NX got adapted to fit that, right? To play alongside with Angular CLI 6 and above. As a result of that, one of the things that was done was moving any NX specific configuration out of the old .angular.json file and into its own file called nx.json. So now the Angular JSON file is exactly, structured the way, based off the schema for Angular CLI JSON, the JSON logic for there, and NX has its own home for its configuration. So in here we see.
Hey, Justin.
Yep.
Mike wants to know, and we have a bonus Mike in the chat, and he wants to know if NX has a setup for app factory config. Is that done in schematics? Do you know? Or JSON?
I don't know. What did they ask?
I understand the question.
Mike, if you can rephrase that question and shoot it in again, we'll try to, because I'm not sure exactly what you're asking either.
Sorry about that.
Let's just say yes. Yes, it does.
No.
Chances are it doesn't, because I don't quite understand.
It's a yes or no question. We have 50-50 chance.
I like
Sorry,
these
Mike.
odds.
I will say that if you're using custom schematics, you can define custom default values for any schematic inside of angular.json.
So the answer is yes. See, I got this. You guys doubted me.
Okay, so in this NX.json file, we've got this npm scope. If we remember back when we created the NX workspace, we declared that npm scope as an option, set it to ngAir. That's where it kind of knows what it's using for that value, right? Then we've got these other configurations, and we're not going to have time to go into these in detail in this episode, but I want to give you a hint at what they are, right? We've got this implicit dependencies as well as this projects property with these tags available, right? Let's talk about the tags really quick first, because they're kind of, I think, the entryway to this. We can provide you can provide tags to each of these individual libs, right? These projects, which are apps or libs, to kind of label them or tag them. I should say tag them because they're tags. Tag them as intent, right? I want this to be a lazy loader module. I want this to be like you want them to be like presentational type components. You want them to, allow NGRX or not, that sort of thing. And then combined with, I think it's in the TS-lint, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason? Okay. And in the TS-lint combined with there, you can configure the tags along with rules to then enforce these scenarios, right? That this lib is only intended to be used as these presentational components and this sort of thing and that sort of thing. And so now you have this ability, because NX is aware of the structure of the application, the opinionated structure of your entire workspace. You can now label these things, and it can take that structure along with this intent to identify this is the way we want to enforce these things we can let the developers know, let the build system know these things are failing, these things are not being met, and keep that safety throughout your application code. Right? And so we can do these tags. We can add these tags in here in this file. We can also add these tags when we generate a lib. There's an option to do that as well. So we can pass them in at that point if we already know at the point we create that lib, the intent. And then this implicit dependencies. Jason, do you want to explain this a little bit, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll take this one.
Okay.
So implicit dependencies are files or objects that right now it's files, but in general, it's things that affect your project without being kind of like explicit about it. It's not actually written in the code that says like, hey, I depend on this thing. But if you think about package.json, which is a good example, that package.json determines what node modules are installed, right? That's what package.json does. And then your app, the code says like, okay, go reach for the Angular package that you installed, right? But it doesn't say like, okay, go to the package JSON that tells you where to find the Angular thing. It's not explicit like that. It only says that like, you're gonna have this installed, and you know that implicitly you've defined what all those things are in package JSON. So this way we can read it as whenever the package JSON changes, the asterisk means all your projects get affected. And in order for us to understand this better, I think it's good if Justin shows the depth graph. But that's a general gist of implicit dependencies. They allow objects to affect projects implicitly.
Perfect segue. All right. So let's run that depth graph. So let's go back into our package.json file. And we can take a look and we see that we've got this, come on, code, yes, code. All right, well, we've got this command depth graph, right? Or the script depth graph. So we can run npm run depth graph. Now here's where things get tricky because I'm gonna have to share this other window, right? Excuse me. All right, so we'll run this. I am going to need to switch the thing that I'm sharing in order for everybody to see this. So give me 1 second.
So while Justin does that, I'll just explain. So Justin's been extremely productive in this 1 hour and 20 minutes or whatever that he's been coding. And he's created a ton of these, what we'll call projects. And some of the projects depend on one another. And this is a visualization that we can keep track of and say like, oh, I'm adding a dependency. This is what gets affected whenever I change this. So if Justin could translate this into English for us.
Yeah, sure. So what we see now is this has generated this image, right? Opening it up in a browser for us. As soon as I ran that command, you didn't see that because it was outside of the scope of what I was sharing, but it basically opened up a browser displaying this layout of the dependency graph of the stuff that we created within our monorepo workspace, right? We see we have the admin-e2e, the website-e2e projects. They depend upon the admin app and the website app, right, that we created. And we can see these circles that are libs that we created that we connected in one way or another to these different apps, right? We made this admin dashboard lib. We said we used routing. We made it just a regular routed module. So that was imported and used right away in our admin app. We can see this solid line here, right? That indicates that it's part of that. You're getting the admin app. You're also getting the admin dashboard at the same time, right? As part of that bundle. Admin episodes and admin people, we lazy loaded those. We've got this dash line indicating that those are used by the admin. They're dependencies of it. They're lazy loaded, right? But they're libs utilized by the admin. Same sort of deal on the website. We see the home, regular route, episode, lazy load route, right? We also created this common core. We didn't add anything to it yet. We didn't import that module into any of our apps yet. So we see that it's not used by anything yet. Same thing with the ngX embedded media. We haven't imported that module anywhere. So it knows that it's not used by any of our applications, right? Anything else you want to add to that, Jason?
This is great for when you're sending PRs. You can let people know other dependencies you're creating. You can show this to your manager, I don't know, CTO, CEO, if they want to know. right? And like, you don't have to show them the code. You don't have to explain it every time. It's like, come on, guys, like the API affects the front end, right? This will get generated. It's calculated, right? It's done via tooling. And you don't have to maintain this. A lot of enterprises will try and draw this out by themselves using awesome tools and kind of create their own graph. But then the second someone makes a code change that creates another relationship, that gets out of date. So it's better to generate this stuff of tooling, and it's great to show kind of not in terms of code, but in terms of a relationship kind of standpoint, how the projects are related to one another. The lines also mean that one of them is dependent. So if I make a change to admin dashboard, we don't want to, we want to rebuild the admin app because we see that the admin app depends on the admin dashboard, but we don't want to rebuild the website part of it. So you don't see a connection between website and admin dashboard. Therefore, when we utilize this information in many different ways, we can leverage it to only do what we need.
Cool. So let's go a little further with this. I'm going to switch back to VS Code here in a second. I'm going to add a component to our admin dashboard lib. And then we're going to run this thing again. We're going to run this thing with the affected command, the depth graphs with the affected command. And we're going to see a new graph that is going to indicate what got changed. And then we'll also dive into the affected as well, and we can kind of see that. So let me switch back here. Hi. Okay. All right. So I've done a commit. So I've kind of got everything completed here. There's no pending changes, that sort of thing. I am going to ng generate a component. I'll do C for component. I am going to call this dashboard dash view. I want to target a project. Again, if we remember that apps and libs get created as project entries, so we can use the Angular CLI flag -- project equals, give it the name. In this case, we're going to do, it was admin dashboard, because we're going to add it to the lib, right? The dashboard lib that we created. Again, that dashboard lib that we created, we nested it in a directory. So when it named that thing, it used the directory name dash the lib name that we gave. That's why the name is admin dashboard. And we can just see that really quick here. If we look in the Angular CLI, angular.json file, we can go in and see our admin dashboard. That's the key name, right, of our project name. So it's going to use that. It's going to say that's where we want to add this component to. And I believe that's all I'm going to need to do right here. Let's check it out, make sure that it's going to create it in the admin libs admin dashboard. It's going to put it in there. It's going to use the Angular style guide convention that actually is using the Angular CLI component generator to generate the same way you're used to it. Creates a directory. You can pass all the other flags, everything you want to do, because we're just using the generate component command, but it knows where to put it, right? So we'll do this. We'll run that. You can take a look here. We can see inside of our libs admin dashboard directory, in the lib directory. Did this refresh? What am I missing? Maybe VS Code did not refresh here.
Oh, you just hit the refresh icon, select the lib folder.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, so now we've got our dashboard view component in here. It updated the module, added it to the declarations, right? Everything that we're used to in terms of the schematic for generating a component. Okay. So now let's go in. We're not actually using this. We're not actually rendering this component right now, but we've wired it up within the module, right? And added it in there. So now it's a part of that. Let's go in. I'm going to switch. Well, actually, I'm going to run this command while I have this open here. Should we run the affected command, Jason?
Yep. So it should be npm run affected : depth graph. And then you'll want to do dash dash and another dash dash base equals master, probably. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we explain really quick what this is. So the dash dash space, we've done it on an episode before, but I think that's basically allowing us to flow through this call, right? To send in an argument down into the script that's run by affected depth graph. Okay.
Yeah, so npm run affected depth graph runs something, and we want to pass arguments to it. So the dash dash allows us to separate where we're adding things to, like, we're flowing it through. That's a good way to say it. We're flowing through the arguments after the dash dash into the command that's run by npm run affected depth graph. And what the argument is, in this case, is base is like your base branch. So we're comparing your current state to your base branch, and we're getting the diff, like literally the git diff, and we're seeing which files have been changed. And according to those files being changed, we can say which projects have been changed, and therefore, recursively through the relationships that NX understands, what other projects got affected as well. And the depth graph will show that visually.
So this is where the tooling really like kind of goes next level, right? Because it allows it to identify, like you mentioned, the changes, right? And then we can start doing things like plugging this into our continuous integration, our build systems to be able to efficiently only rebuild, only test, only confirm the things that were affected by the code changes in our commits that we're pushing in here, right? Because you can think of as monorepo gets big, it's one of those things that we get concerned about is what's the rebuild time of all of our applications? What's the continuous integration experience? When I make a change to that repo, how long is that whole system going to take before I get a green light to merge my PR, right? You need tooling around that to make that efficient and fast. NX provides that tooling. And the affected script is one of those powerful ways that it does that to understand what those changes are. Okay, so let's run this. And I am going to stop sharing this code and share this browser again. Okay. And so we can see here now, we've got that same sort of visualization that we saw a minute ago, but now we got some red, right? Or hopefully red, unless you're colorblind, maybe this is brown, I don't know. But these ones on the left here are highlighted, right? We've got admin E2E, admin, and admin dash dashboard. They're all highlighted that these were the ones that were affected by our change in that difference in that current, changes that we have out there, right? So we can see that our addition of this component to our admin dash dashboard lib is effectively going to affect the admin app, the admin dash E2E app. Those are things that we're going to need to be concerned about, rerunning, retesting, that sort of thing.
Right, and then you'll notice that website on the other side is not highlighted red, so you can tell your QA team you don't have to test the website, just test the admin section and stuff like that.
So pretty cool. You got this visualization, right, that you can see this tree and this how these things play out across your entire workspace in your repository. Okay, let's see, switch back to the code here. So then we can also do this, run this affected, right? I believe, Jason, this is the same command, only without the depth graph part? Or
yeah, so you can run affected for many different commands. There's build, there's test, there's end-to-end, there's lint. I don't know, Justin, what do you feel like doing right now?
Let's see. Let's do affected apps. We're going to do the same option flag. Is that correct?
Same options.
Okay. So let's run this and we'll see what we got here. Okay, we get output that admin was the affected app, right? So we can see there from the command line run from the terminal, we get this output. You can imagine now we can plug these things in again into our continuous integration, into our build pipeline, our workflow to be able to run these commands read out this data that it spit out and make decisions around what we need to do, right? So in this case, ng test admin would be a good thing to run at this point, because we know that admin is affected by this change, right? Probably ng build admin, same sort of deal, right? Like Jason mentioned, we don't need to do that for the website because the website wasn't affected by this code change throughout our repository. So,
and right now there's 2 apps, so it kind of seems simple because it's like, yeah, I touched the admin dashboard. Obviously, admin is affected, but this is very useful for enterprises that are dealing with like 20 apps. You know, they have like 50 something libraries, and like corporations like Google, they've kind of taken this, and they've done their whole, almost all of their code in one monorepo, and they're able to tell you in a calculated fashion what gets affected, what needs to be rebuilt.
To be clear, there's actually 4 applications in play here, because the E2E applications, as they're executable and runnable, are considered to be applications. And if you went back and look at the dependency graph, those E2E applications do show up as red. So you know that it's, since the application that the E2E test is depending on has changed, that you should also be going to look at your E2E test to make sure that those are up to date as well.
great point, Mike. Great point. Okay, that's a lot. There's still a little more too. We won't cover it here. We're going to wrap it up. But you know,
how do you spell NX?
It's hard N, so the letter N.
Okay.
Capital N, lowercase x.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, there's other tooling, like there's a schematic to generate workspace schematics, which is pretty cool. Provide you a way that you can architect your own schematics, and it does the plumbing for that, right? Does the setup and plumbing for that. There's a directory in here that NX sets up called tools, schematics, and that provides you this home for if you want to generate your own schematics. And schematics, you know, the wonder of schematics, we had that on the show a bunch of times too. You create schematics that extend the existing schematics. You can create your own schematics for scaffolding out additional code. NX provides a schematic for setting up that infrastructure to make that pretty easy to get up and going, or pretty straightforward to get up and going with that. Yeah, and then I think there's some things planned in the pipe pretty soon for NX that'll hopefully add additional goodies as well that are in the works. So be on the lookout for that. I don't know if Jason wants to mention anything that's coming or that's being worked on.
Well, a bunch of things that have kind of been merged into the repo already, so if you're following that, you'll see. But one of the things that we really didn't like about how Angular CLI was doing things, but it's justified. So like the karma configurations, every application has its own karma configuration. And this is great because then, you know, the team that works on app 1 can dictate whatever they want there. The team that works on app 2 can dictate whatever they have there. But a lot of times you'll have some shared configuration. So something that we'll be releasing soon, can't say exactly when, but something we'll be releasing soon is that it'll be a global kind of karma configuration again, and you can extend that shared karma config throughout stuff. And then we've updated our ngRx schematics. So for a while, the workspace was on 5.2, version 5.2 of ngRx. So we've updated that to use version 6. So those are things that will be released soon. And there's more stuff after that, which is not really done yet. So stay tuned.
All right. All right, so that's kind of a sneak peek at what the latest version of NX is like, kind of the experience of using it, some of the power that's there and stuff like that. I hope that's helpful. We went through a lot of stuff. Any final questions or anything from our panel, or anybody wants to say anything?
I want to say thank you to the YouTube chat participants, because we had some really good questions today. So you guys rock on. Good on you.
Cool.
And Mike actually did a really good job of answering questions in the chat, even though that was my job. But Mike was really awesome. So don't let it go to your head, Mike.
I'm an assistant to the regional manager.
Nice. Yeah, so you can always go to nrwl.io/nx to get the documentation and stuff on NX. You can get a link to the repo there. We also have a free course on NX workspaces that's in the process of getting updated to the latest version. It was based on our previous version of NX. So some commands and stuff have changed. So that'll be updated as well. Yeah, and try it out. Check it out. It's solves a lot of problems. It's pretty nice, I think. All right. I know Bonnie has some picks. You want to do some picks real quick?
I don't know. Do we have time for picks?
Yeah,
How about if I just do one pick? Because I know we like ran really long, but there's one thing that I discovered this week that I'm pretty excited about. Did you guys know that Stephen Fluin has a YouTube channel?
Yeah, actually.
It's pretty amazing. So he just released some HTTP operators, and I was checking that out this morning, and I thought it was pretty exciting. So we can maybe tweet out a link. I'll tweet out a link, and you can tweet out a link if you want. They're pretty cool. But yeah, I like his videos a lot.
Yeah, demos with Angular. They're very well done.
They are very well done. Don't let it go to your head either, Stephen, if you see this. But they're good.
Very cool. Anybody else have any picks you want to shout out?
Oh, one more. Sorry. One more. Stephen is going to be on NG Houston tomorrow night, actually. So that's it. I have some more, but I'm going to save them.
And where can we view NG Houston?
NG_Houston on Twitter. You can go on YouTube. You can go on meetup.com and join the meetup, and then you'll get notified every single time we have an awesome guest on. Or non-awesome. You would be notified either way, I guess.
Very cool.
But they're all awesome, right?
Yeah, they're all awesome. I wouldn't put them on the show if they weren't. Yeah.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you, Jason, for joining us, helping me out, helping explain this stuff. Really appreciate it. Thanks to our panelists, as always, sharing your time. And next week,
thank you, Justin, for being a guest.
That was an awesome show, Justin.
Yeah, well, I hope you like it, because I'm probably going to do the same thing next week with Angular Playground and show how to utilize that to do component work and isolation, and the power of that, and how that helps that whole workflow process from development architecture, component architecture, to design as well, and makes that easier to work with our pieces of our application that we build. So
that's going to be an awesome show. Remember the first time I saw Angular Playground and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Who wrote that? And you said, I wrote that, Bonnie. And I was like, oh, I felt like such a doofus. Yeah, but I love it. That's going to be cool.
So the same thing. I don't think it'll run as long, but it'll be next week. So tune in or watch it after it's recorded. Either way, whatever you like. All right. Have a good one. We'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out. Later.
See ya.